What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Neon Camouflage Podcast. I'm your host, Max, and today I'm joined by Austin Thompson. Thank you for coming on the podcast, and we appreciate you being here.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Okay, so is this your first time on a podcast?
It actually is my first time on a podcast.
Okay.
I believe.
You believe?
I'd have to go back and think. I mean, maybe I've been a part of maybe I was part of a podcast one time. We did something at the other church, but it wasn't just me. It was me and a group of guys, so kind of a panel thing.
Yeah.
But I don't even know if it was released, so.
There you go. Hey, well, maybe your first time on a podcast. That works. All right, so as you know, I sent you a list of questions. You got a chance to look over them. Off the bat, to give you a little introduction, father, husband, friend, musician. Am I missing anything?
And pastor.
Yeah. Now, just because I don't know, did you go to seminary?
I did, yes.
Okay, you did. Yeah. I thought so, but didn't know for sure. But yeah.
Yeah, I went to the Cornerstone Bible College and Seminary, which is a small seminary in Northern California.
Okay, gotcha.
And there's some ties between them and Expositor's Seminary, which is kind of fun. Mm-hmm. So
for sure.
But it was a real privilege.
Expositor's in Jupiter, correct?
In Jupiter, yeah. That's where the flagship, the main campus is.
Yeah.
And then they've got multi-sites kind of around the country.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. And is there any other ones besides California? I mean, you said around the country.
No, just Cornerstone.
Okay.
Cornerstone has one. I was thinking about Expositors has multiple campuses sort of around the country.
Right.
One is just north in Venice.
Okay, cool. Awesome, man. Alrighty. So just to jump right into it, and now just for the audience, I had broken these questions up into kind of categories as far as almost like seasons or just different areas of your life, essentially. So my first question for you is, let's see here. These are all just like really jumping right in. You know what I mean?
Go for it, man.
Alrighty. Let's go for it. Okay, how has fatherhood influenced your music and priorities? That's heavy off the bat. That's
a great question.
Yeah.
I think in a couple of ways. As it relates to, if we think of music as sort of my vocation.
Yes.
Right. I am a music pastor. So music is an integral part of what I do as a career.
Yep.
Inevitably, with that in mind, the balance between being a father and being any career vocation is obviously has to be considered, right?
Yeah.
Because my primary ministry is to my wife and to my children, and then my work and responsibilities would flow after that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so it does. It impacts what you're able to do and what you're not able to do, which is a good thing. So, I spent some time singing in operas and some of those kinds of things, and the rehearsal schedules and the opportunities to audition for things or do things, whether or not the desire is there for me to do those things anymore, is not as accessible anymore. Right. And I'm fine with that. I was excited for my season to become a father, and it's one of the greatest joys of my life. On the other side, being a father has been really great for my music career or my music involvement, I guess you could say, in the sense that I spend a lot of time singing children's songs teaching my children to sing, sort of not formally, but informally as we sing in the house.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's been a real joy too, just to see them and how their little voices are developing and thinking about those children's songs and how they're written and how they're structured.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, the things that are most successful for the children at any level, whether it's music or teaching, whatever it may be, are things that are very well structured, right? It has the basics down really well. Like the melody is singable. The lyrics are simple but profound. And so I think taking some of the clarity and simplicity that comes with children's music can inform even how you interact with greater works and more complicated and intricate music.
I completely agree. In a way, I think you are, when we're talking about not really presenting, but performing in front of a congregation where it's like, that a lot of times I think, especially for unbelievers, can be, what would you say, like a segue? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, oh, I like kids. Kids are cute. This is really awesome that these kids are up here doing this and they're, put time and effort into this. And it's like, oh, the lyrics are actually that's kind of heavy. Like that has practical application. But to go back, and this is really just scatterbrain, but how do you think, and once I ask this question, this practical question, I want to go back and talk about your music career and how you really got into it. Mm-hmm. But do you think that in your own experience or from a scientific perspective that the voice can be per se trained? Meaning if somebody has a naturally bad voice, is there a chance that they can train that voice to then become something that is...
Yeah.
You kind of
yeah, that's absolutely. Yeah, it's a great question. Like a lot of things in life, it's kind of a case-by-case thing.
Right. Yeah.
And so where I'll always start is inevitably you come across that person who says, sort of jokingly, I'm tone deaf.
Yeah.
Right? And so at that point, I always like to encourage people like, well, whether or not you can sing on tune, you're not tone deaf.
Right.
Because if you were tone deaf, you wouldn't be able to tell just by listening to me speak to you whether I was cross with you, whether I was happy.
Right.
And so your ear you're able to pick up tones. I think it's maybe a different issue as it relates to, can I reproduce a vocal sound that is in line with a melody or within the confines of pleasing music theory and structure, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is it relates to the training of children in singing particularly.
Yeah, and that's kind of
it's a pedagogical thing, right? So I've met...
Real quick, what does that word mean?
So pedagogical just means teaching, right?
Okay.
It means the process. It is the whole structure that is involved in the instruction of a person in anything, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
So pedagogical, like if we were to do a pedagogical exercise, it would be a training exercise, a teaching exercise.
Okay, gotcha.
And so it has a technique that's part of that, techniques and philosophies and those kinds of things.
Right.
And there are differing philosophies on should you teach children to sing, when do you teach children to sing, how do you teach children to sing?
Right.
And so I can't speak authoritatively on all of those kinds of things, but I can give you my philosophy. So a parent, let's say a parent has a child that's 7 years old.
Yeah.
And they come to me and say, I would love for my child to learn how to sing. What do you think is the best course of action?
Okay, yeah.
And I'll say, okay, as it relates to singing, we know that at a certain point in their life, when they go through puberty, their voice is going to change.
Correct, yeah.
Right? So there are going to be some things that if you were able to master at 7 years old,
right, you're not going to be
that are going to change, and you're going to have to start over because you're going to have essentially a new voice after you go through puberty. So poverty in the sense that you lose what you once had,
exactly,
and you have to start all over.
Yeah.
So puberty. So after that shift, inevitably there are going to be some things that have to be relearned.
Yeah.
So what I would say, if you wanted your child if you wanted to give them the best possibility of being a good singer, I always say the best place to start is have them take piano.
Okay.
Piano is referred to jokingly sometimes as the king instrument, but I believe it's true because you can play a simple melody line on a piano, and you can also play an orchestral reduction, which just means you take all the parts of an orchestra and you can reduce it down into a structure that sounds like that. It's a reduction, so it's not every part, but it covers the majority of the parts, and you can play that, and it fills the role of what an orchestra could do, right? So it's so versatile in that way.
Yeah.
So I say train them on piano, get them with a good piano teacher, and have them start to learn their musicality. Okay. That's a big thing when it comes to singer. The reality is, so think about like music school, right? Yeah. When you go to music school, the majority of the musicians there, the violinists, the cellists, the oboists, whatever you play, all of them have been building their musicality for years. Yeah. The crack on singers, or the knock on singers, you could say, is that very often they're not good musicians. And there's a reason for that. I think it's because they get to a certain point and they realize they can sing, right? There's now an awareness of like, whoa, I actually have a singing gift that I didn't realize was there. Right. And in a lot of cases, it can't be taught. It's there. And so now all of a sudden they're getting caught up on all of this music language that everyone else has been having for years. Yeah. And now they're a little shaky, which when we talk about music school, I can talk about that a little bit more. So I would say first thing is, if you want them to be a good singer, an essential aspect of that is to have them be good musicians. That's where you want to start. So have them start learning the language of music, the building blocks of music, and develop a musical skill. Now, if you look at a typical pedagogical book for children to play piano, right?
Yeah.
Often it's, hot crossed buns, 1 a penny, 2 a penny, hot crossed buns.
Yeah.
And the notes are written out for the piano.
Right.
But the lyrics are there as well. So what I would say is, as you're teaching your kids to play piano, have them do it once with the piano, but then as they're practicing, sing along.
Yeah.
And what they'll do is they're going to be holding themselves accountable with the pitch,
connecting it to...
and as the piano is playing, right? And then now what you're doing is you're training the child to bring their voice sort of within the piano is serving as the guide, right? It's giving you the right pitch and you're trying to match it. Totally. So there's a little bit of ear tuning there that I think is helpful.
Yeah.
So that's what I encourage as it relates to what they can be doing. But then if a parent were to say, no, I really want them to start taking singing lessons, after I've given all my disclaimers, and typically that I'll start after puberty or near the end of puberty is when I would be most willing to take on a new voice student if I was teaching voice.
Gotcha.
I would say, okay, if you're desperate for them to take singing lessons and you think that I could invest in them that way, then there are things that we can learn that are not going to change across the barrier, right?
So an instrument falls into that category.
Yeah, so an instrument, but then I'm even talking vocally. Right. So there are some things vocally that you can learn and you can start to learn the discipline of that are not going to change.
Gotcha.
For example, vowel purity. Mm-hmm. So if you ask a typical person to sing a 5-note major ascending and descending scale on one vowel, on an ah, it often sounds like this. When I ask them to do it, they're not trained. I ask them, just go ahead and do this for me. It sounds a little bit like this. Ah. Now you hear how many vowels are in there. There's like 12 vowels in there with all their little micro shadings and all those things, right?
Right.
And so what you can teach a child to do is to tune their ear to having a consistent vowel as they sing. Ah. Start whatever vowel you start with, you end with.
Right.
And that carries over puberty, right? So if you can train them, there are certain things that you can train them to do that if they can master, it will just serve as a good foundation after that puberty change. But like I said, my primary encouragement would be invest them in the discipline of musicianship by taking an instrument of whatever kind. It doesn't have to be piano, it could be violin. But have them sing along as they practice and sort of indirectly build their voice. And then when it's time to address the voice directly, we can do those things after the voice change.
Gotcha. That was a fantastic answer to that question. Thank you. So now we're going to totally jump to the very beginning.
Perfect.
Now, did you grow up singing, playing instruments, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I would say that I come from a fairly musical family. Mm-hmm. My father would probably not say that he was musical, but over the years and listening to him sing, he actually had a very pleasant voice. Mm-hmm. It was untrained, but it was pleasant. He could match the pitches, and I thought he did a good job.
Okay.
I should tell him that. I don't think I've ever told him that. Maybe I'll send him the podcast.
There you go.
My mom also has a great voice. She would, when people ask her if she can sing, she always says, well, I can't sing like Austin can sing, but I can sing. But I think my mother also has a very pleasant voice, and she grew up playing piano. So she had a musical background as it relates to the piano, which was good. And so there was, in that sense, I grew up in a musical family where there was aspects and elements of music that would help me out.
Yeah.
From an early age, they said I came singing out of the womb. I was singing all the time. They actually had to make a rule that I was not allowed to sing at the dinner table, which I thought, like as etiquette goes, was like a universal rule.
Yeah.
So you can imagine my surprise when I go to my friend's house. I was like, man, his little brother sang the whole dinner. Like, why? Like, I thought this was it. Like, why didn't that happen? So, oh, sweetheart, we made that rule for you because you sing too much. I was like, okay, I get it. All right. And now I'm starting to come to terms with how that could be a wise thing as my kids are tempted to sing at the table. And it's like, you know what, sweetheart? Let's all sing together after dinner. Yeah. Let's not sing right now. Let's just have conversation at the dinner table. So I see the wisdom being vindicated in my
now you're on the other
in
side
my maturity. Yeah, I'm on the other side of things.
Now I'm going to ask you a segue real quick.
Yeah.
Now you have a very loud voice, and you're also very good at projecting that in your talking and in your singing. Was that the case when you were a child? Was it the same there, or was it a learned thing?
I think I'd have to ask my mom. I think I probably was always a loud child.